I'm looking at your journey. You got into refereeing in 1972, and from progressing at junior level and intermediate, you were refereeing in the Irish League by the age of 23. You were a FIFA referee from 1980 to 2000 and officiated in two World Cup finals in 1986 in Mexico and in Italy in 1990. So we're going to bring it right back. What got you into refereeing?
It's a question I'm often asked, Tim, obviously, and I think the main reason was that, obviously the main reason was I was very, very keen on football and interested in football, and I knew even when I was a young guy at school and playing boys brigade football that I was never really going to be a top player, even at domestic level. I could play obviously, but not at top level. So I remember watching one or two games and thinking, perhaps naively to myself, that I could do better than the guy in the middle, which maybe sounds a little bit cheeky, a little bit strange, but for some reason the seed was sown, and I went to a referee's recruitment course and came through the course and started to referee football matches, and enjoyed it, genuinely enjoyed it, and got a good reaction from players at the end of the game, which was encouraging as well. And really just step by step, match by match, things progressed very, very steadily.
Do you remember your first game in the Irish League?
It was Ballymena Portadown at Shamrock Park, so that was the first senior match that I did. So my memory from that was the slope on the pitch, and I thought I was fit. I thought I was fit until the last 10 or 15 minutes of that game, and I suddenly realised that the pace of Irish League football is much, much faster than what I was ever accustomed to. So that was just a little wake-up call at that time, just to increase the fitness levels and just put in more work, which of course was something that needed done, whatever it is, towards the referee, because you can see him easily, you can identify him easily, and there's so few people, it's clear who's doing it. So I would always say to referees coming through that if you can handle those types of moments, when you're in front of bigger crowds and it really just becomes a noise, you can't identify the individual involved, then you'll be fine. It's just surviving in the early years at junior level.
Yeah. When was your first cup final?
First cup final was 1986, before I left for Mexico. So that was the first of the four Irish Cup finals that I refereed.
That must have been huge. I mean, officiating at your first cup final domestically, then being called up to officiate at the 1986 World Cup finals in Mexico. I mean, how was that feeling as an individual?
Well, the Irish Cup final is a tremendous day, and it's one to be enjoyed and one to be cherished. And all you can really hope for at the end of a game like that is that when the final whistle goes, nobody's looking towards the referee, or nobody's accusing the match officials of making a match changing decision that's possibly incorrect. So you really want to get through those games under the radar and just get through it without being noticed. So thankfully on that occasion, that's what happened. And of course then you're known as the guy that's going to the World Cup finals to represent Northern Ireland. So it's really, really important that you come through with a clean sheet, as it were, and you're not gaining publicity for the wrong reasons, which could affect your confidence, could affect lots of things. So yeah, it was nice. Well, Italia 90 was a different experience, because having been to Mexico, obviously you're thinking, coming up to when the announcements for the final referees are being made, do I have a chance? Am I still in the running? And it's quite an interesting story. I was driving home from work one day, and the BBC Sports News was on about 5:20, and just the final comment that the announcer made was that Alan Snoddy's going to the World Cup finals in Italy, and that was it. And I'm thinking, did I really hear that properly? And I was, I think, 5 minutes from the house, and of course by the time I got home, the phone already started, and my wife had been told by somebody who had rang with congratulations. So it was a strange way to be told, but anyway.
So you found out about being selected as a referee for the 1990 World Cup finals in Italy by listening to the local BBC news bulletin on the radio in your car?
Yeah, exactly. Yes, exactly. That's exactly how it happened.
Brilliant. What was your first game you officiated at in the 1990 World Cup?
The first game, I think I was an assistant referee in a match, and then of course I had the famous or infamous situation with the Germany-Colombia game and Valderrama's play acting. And if you had your 15 minutes of fame, I guess that was mine. So that was the big story that was sort of circling around me at that stage. Yeah, I mean that was a moment that it's difficult to explain, but when you're in the middle and you see something happen and you make a decision, and then the player decides to stay on the ground as if he's badly injured, and you play on for a long time. It's something that you can't prepare for, and it's something that I made my decision at the time and stuck by it. And I think to this day, nobody can say it was the wrong thing to do.
Tell the listeners about that story. Valderrama was a player with the huge hair, like a mane of a lion.
Well, we were very close to half time, and there was a normal challenge for the ball in midfield between Valderrama and one of the German players, and he suddenly fell to the ground, maybe exaggerating some small contact or some small piece of shirt pulling that there was on him. But referees make their decisions very, very quickly. They don't react to crowd noise because the decision has already been made in your mind and your head. So my clear decision at that stage was that he hasn't been fouled, and there's a bit of play acting going on, and he's looking for a free kick. So I just did as any referee would do, play on. But what he decided to do was he was going to stay on the ground and just lie there and pretend that he got some sort of injury. So it really became a battle of wills. And I was determined that I wasn't losing this battle, because if I'd lost this battle, then I was going to have awful trouble for the rest of the game, just having, keeping authority, keeping the thing under control. So he lay there and lay there and lay there, and then eventually there was a stoppage in play, and I asked the stretcher to come on to carry him off, which they did eventually. Took him to the corner of the field in Milan, and the San Siro. At that time, the tunnel for the players was down in one corner, so he was stretchered off, and of course the match probably was delayed for well over 2 minutes while all this happened, and we were just on the stroke of half time. So just before the half time whistle was being blown, then he'd come out and come back onto the field of play to join the rest of the game, and then the half-time whistle went. So probably the half-time whistle came at a good time, and then things could settle down a little bit. But we were told as we came into the tunnel that as soon as the stretcher had vanished out of sight of the stadium, that he jumped off and then came back up the touchline to come on again. So I guess this was probably, when we look back, one of the first high-profile situations of a player simulating a player trying to pretend he was injured. So no criticism of the player. It's just the facts of what happened.
There must have been some big names then, as Germany, or West Germany back then, would have had Matthäus, Rudi Völler, Klinsmann,
Völler, Matthäus, yeah, all the top, obviously the top German players of that era. Yeah.
Was there any stage that you had to pinch yourself and say, "This is amazing. I'm in complete control of this game with all these stars"?
Yes, there are, and I guess my pinch moment came in my first game in the 1986 World Cup in Mexico, where I was linesman for Italy and Argentina in the first game that they had played in the tournament, and it was obviously my first game in the tournament as well. And at that time, the youngest ever referee at a World Cup final tournament. So there was a whole lot potentially going on, and we were standing in the tunnel. waiting to lead the two teams out onto the field. And I just, to this day, vividly remember turning around and seeing all these faces that I'd seen on television screens, world-class players, and thinking, what am I doing here? What's going on? This is actually happening. And for a few seconds, really disbelief, I suppose, is one of the words you could use. But then very, very quickly focusing and remembering that I was there to do a job and there to do my best and get things right. And, this was a game of football, 11 against 11, and there were important decisions to be made, and just embracing the whole occasion and going out and doing what I was there to do.
Outside of the game that you talked about, is there any special moment at Italia 90 that sticks in your mind?
Probably the first special moment was getting the appointment in the first place, I suppose, because nobody from Northern Ireland had ever been to two World Cup finals. We had Jack Adair in 1966, a long time back, and Malcolm Moffat in Spain in '82. So I was the first one to go back again, and probably this was as a result of being given my chance at 31 and having taken that chance, and people had confidence in me, then being appointed again. I think there's more, having had the chance to watch games as well when you weren't involved as a referee was also a great learning experience. So the whole tournament, or the whole experience, was probably what I would remember most, rather than individual moments.
When did you decide that it was time to hang the whistle up, so to speak?
Yeah, that decision, there were actually several reasons that all pointed towards me stopping when I did stop. One of the big ones probably was in my 32 years as a referee, I'd never had to cry off a game because of injury. So I'd gone for that length of time without having any injury whatsoever that stopped me refereeing a football match. So I had this in the back of my mind, because I knew that if I did even a small injury that prevented me from refereeing, then that little sort of record, as I called it, would be broken, and I don't think I'd have ever forgiven myself if that had happened. Mm-hmm. Plus, let's be honest, the birthdays were clicking by. Fitness levels probably at that stage were starting to drop, and then you had the vast experience behind you to sort of compensate for that, if you like. You could read the game, anticipate things, just use your head a little bit more. I knew there was an opportunity coming up for the UEFA observer role, perhaps a year or so after I did stop. So I knew I needed to get experience as a referee observer domestically before that opportunity would arise. And when you added everything together, it made perfect sense to stop, because I also, during my career, could see people who were hanging on for another year. And then things started to go badly wrong, and the standards that you'd set yourself over many years would start to drop. Mistakes would creep into performances. Your reputation would start to suffer. So much better to get out when you're still fairly close to the top level. So when I added all those things up, Tim, the decision became not an easy decision, because you were stopping something that had been your life for 32 years, but I knew there was another chapter or two ahead with other things, and still being involved as much as possible in the game.
You're now FIFA and UEFA referee instructor. Talk us through about the second part of your career.
Yeah, well, I suppose you could call it that. That's exactly right. So I'm used. Pre-COVID, I was extremely busy with seminars and different projects in different countries, and then that sort of came to a halt. So I think we all became familiar with Zoom calls and Microsoft Team calls during that year and a half, perhaps stretching on to 2 years now, where a lot of the referee education and instruction was done virtually. which was a new experience. But now, thankfully, in the last couple of months, things have started to return to some normality. So I'm hoping again then to be busy, busy travelling, conducting seminars for FIFA and UEFA, and some small educational programs or other projects that I've got involved in.
It must have been quite interesting travelling around different countries and working alongside different organisations and people. You've held roles in Cyprus, Latvia, Greece, and Russia.
Yeah, they came. They more or less came again. Opportunities that I guess certainly the Cyprus one, the first one, came a little bit out of the blue. So really the background behind that one was I'd spent 8 years as referee development officer with the Irish FA when I left the bank. Managed to get early retirement at 50 and joined the IFA as the first ever referee development officer, which was obviously for me a really, really exciting time, because you were working full time in football and you were, working in refereeing, which had been your passion for so long, and being the first guy to walk into an empty desk and a clean sheet of paper and start to try and develop refereeing in Northern Ireland was a huge challenge, and also a huge honour and a real pleasure. And I learned so much in those 8 years that sort of led me on then to working in other countries and using that experience and success that we had in a lot of elements in refereeing in Northern Ireland at that time, to use that experience in places like Cyprus, who needed an independent person there to sort of run refereeing. And the reason that many outside experts go to countries abroad is simply to bring independence there, because it's very, very difficult for the local people to run their own shows.
Anyone listening to this podcast that is inspired in getting involved in refereeing, what way should they go about doing that?
Well, the first step is obviously to apply to the referee department at the Irish Football Association. So if there is anybody listening who's even contemplating or thinking about becoming a referee, then I would obviously encourage them to lift the phone or send an email in. The contact details would be on the website, and then the referee department will come back to them with information about a beginner's course. And hopefully there is, a program of courses being organised probably as we speak, because as we said at the top of the show, there is a shortage which needs to be addressed as quickly as possible. And this will take time, of course, because the training to be a referee can take a couple of months, which with a series of weekly classes, or perhaps a couple of days at the weekend. But refereeing can give you so much. For a young person listening to the podcast, perhaps maybe in a similar situation that I was, enjoys football, but knows that they're not going to be a top player, the opportunity is there to become a top referee and share the same fields of play as the top players do. And it does take time. It doesn't happen overnight. So it is a program or something that will take several years, but certainly worth the wait.
What advice would you give to a young or new referee?
My advice would be, first of all, enjoy yourself, because it's not something that you want to start and not enjoy. It's going to improve your fitness levels, because you need to train to be a referee. You're physically active on match days. It'll teach you a lot about managing people, social skills, as I would call it, making decisions, using your personality, using your character, and being able to control 22 people for 90 odd minutes is something that can teach you a lot, which will help you in other aspects of your life. So for somebody young, who's perhaps still at school or perhaps university or starting their new job, they're at a stage in life where refereeing can teach them a lot and help them a lot and give them a lot of confidence.
The other thing I'd like to talk about is players, coaches, spectators, parents' behaviour in the touchline, especially at junior level. What way do you think is best to address this, to offer more respect and protection to referees?
Well, I know in my time with the Irish FA and speaking with the coaches and all the tremendous work that was being done with the kids' football on Saturday mornings and trying to introduce respect programs and things like that, that there was a lot of success of reducing all of that, because you know, a lot of these games were also being refereed by young referees who were starting off, and the last thing we needed was for somebody on the touchline, be it a coach, manager, parent, whatever, to put the referee off, never mind the player off. And I think there was also a desire back then to just let the kids play, don't interfere. And I think they set up special little zones for parents, which were, you know, back off the field of play a little bit, and they had their own space, and there was, you know, codes of conduct and that type of thing introduced. So I guess that made a significant difference. But you know, the biggest issue at junior football is the issues that arise from the touchline towards towards referees, and it's something that's extremely difficult to stamp out. So it is, but it is a problem. There's no question of it.
There's been a concept that has been used recently in our small-sided games in Irish FA programme, and that's called Silent Saturdays. So this is whereby only the kids' voices you're allowed to hear. Parents and coaches are not allowed to shout on unless it's simply, you know, well played and along those lines. We need to remember young referees are also learning the game and will make mistakes just like players. They need to be protected.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, we're into child protection issues now as well, and we're into racism, and we're into, you know, the social media aspect as well, which are all things that I didn't have to really put up with during my spell. So you know, there's a tax, if that's the right word, being addressed, not just to referees. I mean, it's not just a referee issue, it's players, coaches, etc., have to put up with this, the modern way, if you like. And you know, we all can see the issues that social media is causing. I guess 99.9% of it is perfectly fine and acceptable, but it's this very, very small minority of people that just are simply abusing people for totally the wrong reasons. And you know, we all know what the problem is. And I think this morning I was listening to Sky Sports discussing it, and nobody seems to be able to find a solution to it. And I can understand that, because it's such a difficult issue.
Yes. It's something everyone needs to come back together and understand. Without a referee, there is no game.
Yeah, and unfortunately that is the case at the moment. And you know, I can well remember, again, I keep going back, obviously over the years, and there were many junior matches that never had referees obviously at the lower levels of the game, and then step by step we managed to get every game in the country covered with a referee. So that was a very positive move. But you know, can under 6, under 7, under 8 kids games be played without a referee? Of course they can, because the kids just get on with it and enjoy themselves. And you know, at some point then a referee becomes more necessary. You know, and the other point I would make about refereeing and kids football and youth football is, you know, that's also where young referees start to learn their trade. So they need to be in a safe environment, because we can lose them very, very quickly, and that's not what we need to happen.
Yeah, I mean, that's so true. I think over the years I haven't been too bad towards referees. Although 2 weeks ago I shouted on at a referee on.
Did you? Right.
I shouted, "Ref, well played. That was a great advantage you played. Well done. That's great refereeing."
Good for you.
I think he was quite shocked actually getting a compliment.
Keep it up, Tim. Keep it up.
Now, I've saved this to the end as this is huge. You were awarded the MBE in the Queen's Birthday Honours List in May 2020. Congratulations, sir.
Thank you so much. And it it still seems a surreal moment, and it still seems unreal. And it's when people like you just mention it again there, it's just another reminder. So yeah, I mean, it's you hear everybody talking about it's a real honor, and it's only when you sort of receive it yourself that you appreciate just how special this is. And for somebody out there who has decided that they think I deserve an honor like this and make the application and find, as I understand it, a few people to support the application, then that makes it truly special. And the other element from my side is that I see it really as a reward for the family, because they have stood by me over the years when I was obviously much younger and traveling abroad and leaving my wife Elaine and kids behind for 3 or 4 days, or sometimes weeks on an end, as it was in tournaments. Without that support and the support of Northern Bank, who I was employed by for all those times as well, and able to get away. So there's so much that went on during my career, and then to sort of sit back just and reminisce and think, well, okay, I'm now an MBE it's very, very difficult to find the right words to describe it. So yeah,